Hey everybody, Clif here, and thank you for joining me for today's video. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about Peach and Daisy. This will be basically the third time I made this kind of video. I did this video two other times. The other two times were pretty much the same exact video. I redid the second video because I noticed after watching the first one that there were some light glares in the when I was doing that video and I was trying to show some things. There were some light glares, so it was kind of hard to see what I was trying to show. So I had to redo it, but I'm basically going to try and redo it again this time, except I'm going to try and present it much better this time, at least I hope, okay? So the basic premise of this video is going to be like a Peach and Daisy video, Peach and Daisy as in Princess Peach and Princess Daisy from the Nintendo, from Nintendo. And basically what I'm going to be presenting in this video is that I'm going to sort of go over my general thoughts and my general idea of rivals for Peach and Daisy. So, and I'm going to be basically presenting my own general ideas and what I think of, how I think these characters should be and how I think it should be presented. Now, some of my ideas are not necessarily my own ideas. Some of them are actually ideas that other people had thought of as well, and I kind of like those basics of it. So in my opinion, I think those would actually work much better as well. So I'll probably stick in those. But I don't really know who generally came up with, who was the first person to come up with that idea necessarily. But whoever did it, congratulations to them. So basically this is going to be a Peach and Daisy video where I'm going to be sort of going over my general thought and idea of rivals for Peach and Daisy to basically mirror the rival that Mario and Luigi has with Wario and Waluigi. So pretty much like that. Now, before I really get into it and really dive into it, I really need to get into some first. Okay, so if we're not familiar with the whole Wario and Waluigi thing. Now, the first game to actually feature all four of these characters, and I'm not talking about Mario and Luigi. I'm really focusing on Peach, Daisy, Wario, and Waluigi, and stuff like that. So forget about Mario and Luigi and stuff like that. But the first game to feature all these characters in the very first game to feature all these characters was Mario Tennis for Nintendo 64. Interestingly enough, Mario Tennis is actually the first game that was the first game to feature Waluigi entirely, things like that. It was his very first game. Another thing to point out is that Waluigi was not actually created by Nintendo. He is owned by Nintendo, and he is a Nintendo character, but he was not created by Nintendo. Waluigi was actually created by a software designer, or was created by Camelot, by a software designer when they were developing Mario Tennis. Now, the interesting thing I want to bring this up is that when the whole concept of Waluigi was being created, this was most likely done because when the game was sort of being developed, Nintendo didn't have a lot of humanoid characters to be able to carry rackets, and then they were trying to think of some good characters to use as double partners for Wario necessarily. So basically, an idea was thrown out to bring Waluigi in, or not necessarily bring Waluigi in, but to come up with an idea to give sort of a rival for Waluigi, to give a rival to Luigi to be a partner to Wario, much as the whole concept between Mario and Luigi and Wario and Waluigi. So pretty much like that. Now, the interesting thing about this is that when this whole idea was being thrown out there, there were sort of ideas thrown about for ideas to give Wario and Waluigi girlfriends as well. Well, I believe the general concept of the names that were presented were Wapeach, which would translate into Wapeach, and then I suppose for Daisy it would have been Rudeijī, which most likely we can assume would be Wadaisy. But it seems like Shigeru Miyamoto didn't necessarily like the idea, or basically what is stated from what I can seem to understand is that he did not even want to see Wario and Waluigi's girlfriends. Now, it's interesting I bring this up is because if we're just looking at this and we're reading this statement and how it says that I don't even want to see their girlfriends, well then we have to stop and ask ourselves this question. Well, what if the rivals to Peach and Daisy were not girlfriends to Wario and Waluigi? Could it still happen? In most cases, people are going to say, no, never going to happen. That's just a stretch. And I know, all right? I totally see the point, and I see why it couldn't happen. I'm just sort of just making a conversation out of it, okay? So that's all I'm doing. So I wanted to bring that up real quick. All right, so going into it necessarily, the interesting thing about Wario and Waluigi necessarily for them is that they were more like rivals to Mario and Luigi in the sense of popularities, or trying to be better at them, trying to get all the fame and the attention that Mario and Luigi have. So trying to get all the respect. So they're kind of jealous of, not jealous in the sense of because of how well liked they are, how much attention that they get. It's like Mario and Waluigi want that as well. They want to have all that popularity and all that fame for themselves. Now, and that's a really good way to look at it. So for my ideas for bad versions or Peach and Daisy, what I can most likely assume the best thing to do is not to like give out like the idea of like trying to attempt fame, but what if Peach and Daisy were like love rivals in a sense? So like think of it like this. So instead of like these two characters being like the girlfriends to Wario and Waluigi, even though in reality it does seem like they would be a good fit for each other, or even though these two sides do not like each other, right? So imagine like if I'm presenting a bad Peach and bad Daisy, these two characters would basically be in love with Mario and Luigi, all right? So they would be love rivals for Peach and Daisy to attain Mario and Luigi. So obviously bad Peach for Mario and bad Daisy for Luigi. So think like that. I think that would be a very good way to put it, and to help separate them. It helps separate them. Now, the idea that I want to go over necessarily is some other things as well. I should probably get in the whole concept of the name thing. I have a much different name I want to present, and but I'll get into that in a moment. And so, going over necessarily, we could look at some general concepts and general ideas necessarily. Like, one idea we can probably present is necessarily like how will they be presented in appearance? And what I mean by that is like, how will we define them in looks and personalities necessarily? So, let's look at Peach's personality and Daisy's personality, and then we'll sort of like see how we can go for that for these two rivals. Okay, so Peach is sort of given sort of like a sweet and it's like a sweet, kind man or person, and someone who's very sweet and kind, and someone who has a very charming nature, or who's very lovable and very charming. Okay, and then Daisy is sort of an energetic tomboy kind of personality. So you have like Peach, who's sort of like sweet and well mannered, and you have Daisy, who is energetic tomboy kind of princess who she like Daisy's not like afraid to speak her mind. She's not afraid to show that hey, just because I wear a dress doesn't mean I can't fight for myself. These are Daisy's words, not mine. Okay, Daisy's, not mine. Daisy's, not mine. Daisy's, not mine. Daisy's, not mine. All right, you got that? All right. Now, the basic thing I can probably present is that what if we sort of like did the opposite of this? And that would probably be the best idea, and I imagine would be the technically speaking, I'm most likely going to assume that everybody's going to say, well, wouldn't that be the most logical idea? And you are right. So it would be kind of a dumb thing to necessarily say, but I'm just going to say it for the whole sense of this video, okay? So please just go with me on this. All right, so, just like I said, Peach is sort of like a, well-mannered and kind personality. So if we're doing this, then obviously bad Peach would obviously be like maybe like a rude and, a rude or mean with ill-mannered or ill-tempered personality to go with it. So that would probably be the best idea for bad Peach. And then for bad Daisy, most likely what I'm going to assume is because Daisy's sort of an energetic tomboy, then most likely the best thing I can have is maybe like sort of a lazy do-it-yourself kind of a princess attitude for bad Daisy. So someone who is like, like lazy in the sense and says like, do it yourself or do it for me kind of person. And so she's always like, think of it like she's like always being kind of person to be like a bit of a snob or a bit of a brat who just doesn't want to take responsibility, just doesn't want to do things. And she's always got to have someone do something for her. She's always asking people to do things for her, no matter what it is. It's like, lift my tea, cut my bread, make my bed. Well, generally speaking, and I think generally speaking, in rural hospitals, I imagine like the servants and stuff like that are the ones to take care of the beddings and stuff like that. But like what I'm trying to get at is that even in the Nintendo world for these characters, Peach and Daisy aren't necessarily presented as characters who can't really defend or do things for themselves. I mean, come on, think about it. All right, they're in racing games, they're in sports games, they're practically. I mean, heck, Peach is in so many main Mario games where she's playable. Well, so you have to think, is like, wow, this princess can't do anything for herself. So yeah, so that's basically what I'm going to present in terms of their personalities, okay? Now, what would be a good way to distinguish them in terms of like coloring? Because like not only is it the personality to help distinguish between Peach and Daisy, it also has something to do with their dresses, right? So the coloring theme of their dresses, okay? So Peach's dress is more focused on pink coloring, all right? Now, there are two types of pinks that we can go forward on Peach. So there is like sort of the regular pink, and there's sort of like the more the darker pink, which is around her panniers. So looking at Peach and Daisy's dresses, now Peach and Daisy actually wear a very similar kind of dress. There are actually notable some differences, all right? So now I'm not really sure what type of dress Peach and Daisy necessarily wear, what kind of dress this is, but look, all I can say is that I think it'd be easier if I just continue on with what I'm trying to say. Okay, so we know for the panniers, which is I believe the things around the around the waist and stuff like that of their dresses, I believe that would be the panniers. Now Peach's panniers are a pink but more of a darker one, while Daisy wears a yellow dress that has sort of like orange panniers. Now another thing that's different about their dresses is that Daisy has one extra, I think it's referred to as a frill line at the bottom. They both wear like floor-length gown dresses with Daisy having crap. I'm not really sure what it's necessarily called. Like what's that bottom part called? I should have wrote it down. But Daisy sort of has like one more than what Peach has. So one thing I can think of necessarily is that if we're going to be presenting an idea for this for for Bad Peach and Bad Daisy, then just like Wario and Waluigi wear similar outfits to Mario and Luigi, except with some notable differences, then I feel like the good idea can work for Bad Peach and Bad Daisy as well. So what I would like to present necessarily is this. So imagine that they have the same kind of dresses, okay? So we're looking at the very same kind of dresses, but there will be some notable differences, okay? So first I'll start with coloring. So for Bad Peach, now Wario and Waluigi's colorings, alright, so the easiest way I sort of came up with this, and I'm not the only person who sort of came up with these colorings, because other people have come up with these colorings as well, alright? And to be honest, I kind of like the idea of it, and I think it actually makes more sense. So this isn't necessarily my own idea. A whole bunch of other people came up with this idea, so I think I really like it as well, so I think it's the best one to stick with. Okay, so, okay. Alright, so Wario and Waluigi outfits are pretty much the same as Wario and Luigi's, except some coloring differences and some, coloring differences, alright? So for Bad Peach, the easiest way I can probably say is if we look at the coloring wheel. So Mario and alright, so if you're looking at the coloring wheel, red is a primary color, while if you look at the opposite of red is actually green, which is actually Luigi's color, okay? And then if you look at Wario's color is yellow, which is primary color, and the opposite of yellow is purple, right? Which is basically Waluigi's color, okay? Now, I sort of bring this up and I sort of present this is that, I'm starting to think like it would be an interesting idea to do the opposite colors, so like pink and orange. Now, Daisy is represented by two different colors necessarily, all right? Like orange and yellow, okay? Now, the interesting thing I bring this up is because I'm probably thinking it'd be more interesting and sort of interesting if not only if we sort of did the opposite of like what Mario and Wario and Luigi and Waluigi are, because Mario and Wario don't have the opposite of colors, all right? So they have two different primary colors. So Mario has one set of primary colors while Wario has a different set of primary colors, all right? And then there are two counterparts with have sort of the opposite colors of them, with Luigi being the opposite of Mario and Waluigi being the opposite of Wario. So in my personal opinion, I think it would be sort of an interesting dynamic is if we did it if we actually did it for Bad Peach and Bad Daisy, where we actually gave them the opposite colors of those colors. So pink is really is more in the lighter shade of red. It's a much lighter shade of red. So it's still in like the primary color of red. So it would definitely be in like the green category. So, and because like Wario is like has yellow, and we can sort of see Bad Peach being sort of like a connection to Wario, maybe having sort of like a yellow-green or green-yellow color. So either a yellow-green dress with maybe like green-yellow panniers, or even a green-yellow dress with yellow-green panniers. So something like that. I also think it would be interesting if just like Daisy has sort of like I think they're called frill lines. At the bottom of the dress where Daisy has one more. So maybe adding a third one for that to Bad Peach to symbolize, symbolize her being like the third one introduced, and then maybe for Bad Daisy, hers can have a fourth one indicating, indicating that she's a fourth princess. Well, not like fourth princess introduced, because there are other princesses were introduced, like even Rosalina. But I'm just trying to stick to like these characters necessarily. All right, so that's all I'm doing for that. And imagine if their pannier, for Bad Peach and Bad Daisy, imagine if their panniers were sort of, like Peach and Daisy's are more like perfectly rounded. So imagine if theirs were like more jagged and pointy, or like they were more rougher, or like they're more rougher and more sharper. So like instead of it being like a perfect curve or a perfect round movement, a roundness, it was more sharp arc, more like a triangle sentence. So to add a bit of a texture, or a bit of a flavor to it necessarily. So I'm not really sure. I mean, I suppose it could work. So I really like, in my personal opinion, I don't have any problems with like what kind of dresses they would necessarily wear. I just figure like it would be a good idea to sort of like, I'm just sort of talking and sort of just giving some general concept that, if we're going to be basically presenting them, then maybe it would be a good idea to sort of like come up with a general idea like how these characters would be presented. So in my personal opinion, I really wouldn't care about the type of dress, but I'm just sort of like adding it in to basically sort of add a statement to it. That's all I'm really doing. So and hey, if other people prefer like the dresses what they are, then all right. So I did mention Bad Peach's colorings with yellow, green, yellow. So now moving on to Bad Daisy, and that the way I can see it is her being presented by the colors like purple and blue. Now it's hard to necessarily come up like what color purple necessarily. So or what color blue. So maybe like a royal blue, or maybe like a sky blue, or I'm not really sure. Now that I think about it, I should have wrote down some. I should have actually wrote down some of these names of these colors so I wouldn't forget them. But yeah, so for Peach and Daisy, I can imagine maybe like like a blue and purple theme. So maybe like maybe more like blue. So maybe to mimic Daisy having sort of a purple dress and then blue panniers, or even like a blue dress with purple panniers. And not to go with the same kind of blue that that Rosalina has, because Rosalina has sort of like a cyan blue. So to distinguish her from a different kind of blue, I think that would be very important. Right. So yeah, so that's my basic idea, like going over their dresses. Now, as I said before, I'm not the only person to come up with these colorings, right? Other people have come up with these colorings ideas for these bad characters as well. And I kind of like the ideas of these colorings as well, so I think it would be a good idea to stick with it. Okay, so, my general idea and thoughts of, like, Bad Peach and Bad Daisy is that I don't typically have any problems with them. I know a lot of people, like, tend to think, like, Nintendo is sort of like getting overboard with introducing some of these characters, and that there's no need for them, and like it's just a waste of time, and that you have perfectly good characters. But anytime Nintendo introduces a character, I kind of like it. Like every time we get a new character, and I always try like to take advantage of it and use these characters whenever I can. That's why like even in Mario Kart 8, like I have no problem playing with Pink Gold Peach. I know a lot of people. I know there are like a lot of people out there who despise Pink Gold Peach, but I don't have any problems with Pink Gold Peach. I think Pink Gold Peach, like sure, like I wouldn't describe her as being my favorite character of all Nintendo, especially the female categories. But I like her enough to where I want to use her as a playable character, and I don't have any problems with that. Plus, I see her as a good idea to represent for like the females necessarily, is because like looking at Mario and even the other character, it's like especially Mario, like why should Mario be the only one to be allowed to have like a metallic playable character throughout the entire series, and like why shouldn't like a female character, especially Peach, be presented to that as well? And so that's sort of like what I'm sort of like throwing out there and sort of giving, is that if Mario and Luigi should have the concept of having bad characters, then it's only fair to say that Peach and Daisy should have the same relevance to that as well. And truthfully speaking, that is true. Now, whether or not you like the idea of these characters or even want these characters to come into play, that's all up to you, all right? So I'm not here to change anyone's opinions. I'm just here to basically speak my mind and sort of like dive into what I'm trying to say. So that's all I'm really doing. Okay, so all right. So after I explained all that and basically gave my general thoughts on it, and so like I personally don't have any problems with Bad Peach and Bad Daisy. I think they would be interesting characters if they're done right. Sure, it would have to like depend on like how they would be introduced, like how it would be presented. But I think But I think if you just work with it and just try, right, and then, you just set your goals and try and figure out the best thing, then who knows, like, they can probably become popular, and if they don't, then they just disappear from time, and they're never seen again. That's pretty much how it is for any other kind of character that is introduced, but yeah, it just disappears from time. So yeah, so that is for that. So, alright, so now I should be getting into, like, the whole name scheme. Okay, so, alright, so sorry this was for the long wait on this part. Alright, so I need, like, I've already mentioned there were other names before, like the original names, but I need to go over again. So, the basic names presented for Wapeach and Wadaisy, necessarily, or for the Japanese name, was be Warupichi and Warudeijī, alright? So these were basically presented as their names before. Now, I think it would be very perfect and interesting to point out that I have a much different name for them, but I also want to leave in some evidence to basically state why these names are, and sort of like leave in sort of an idea, or sort of like leave in evidence to state like, oh yeah, I can see the connection there. I see the connection. Okay, I get where you're going at. Okay. So going over their names necessarily, and I did come up with a lot of ideas for their names, right? Sometimes like I even like thought using like different types of like a different type of fruit or a different type of flower that is located in the same family of Peach has the name of Peach, so looking at a different type of name that is in the Peach family, or even looking at another type of Daisy flower that's in the Daisy family. So that was one idea I looked at. But I really wanted to stick with the same thing that like Wario and Waluigi have with Mario and Luigi, where they have their names sort of tied into their names. Mario and Wario have names that rhyme, with Waluigi literally having Luigi's name in his name, with just adding a Wa to it. Alright, so now the interesting thing I need to point out is that I need to say this real quick. So now for most Western audiences necessarily, especially if you don't understand how Waluigi's name work, okay? So for most Western audiences is that you just look at Waluigi's name, and you literally think that you just added the Wa prefix to Luigi's name. And truth be told, in a way, you can sort of say that, oh yeah, I see that, but you actually have to look at it through the Japanese meaning. So Waluigi's name in Japanese is Waluigi, okay? And Luigi's name in Japanese is Ruigi. Now there is no L in Japanese, okay? So if you look at Waluigi's name not only contains the Japanese word Warui, meaning bad, but also contains Luigi's name in Japanese, Ruigi. So hence a bad Luigi, okay? Now and the interesting thing about this is that this doesn't actually work for Peach's name. Now, for Daisy, it kind of does, okay? Daisy's, it kind of does. For Peach, it doesn't necessarily work, okay? So, you literally would just be combining, like, the Japanese word Waru with Peach's name. And then for the English version, you really would just be slapping the word Wa to Peach's name. So it doesn't exactly fit necessarily. It doesn't feel like it works, or it doesn't actually feel like it belongs. Now, for Daisy, like, if you're looking at the English category, it does still fit with, like, adding the Wa prefix to it. But the interesting thing about Rudeijī necessarily about is that her name is actually very similar to Luigi's name in Japanese. And that what I mean by that is not the first part, but the last part of it. Okay. Okay. So if you're taking the Japanese word waru and then you're spelling out Deiji's name, so that'd be Warudeiji. And if you move the de part, or the de, and you put those remaining letters together, you actually get Waruiji's name. All right. The main difference is that Deiji's long vowel sound is at the end of the I. Is at the end of I. All right. But for Waruiji and Ruiji, their long vowel I is for the first I. So Daisy's is for the second I, and then for Waruiji and Luigi is for the first I. Okay. That's the only difference, all right? But if you remove the de from Rudeijī and put the remaining letters together, you get Waruigi, okay? And another thing I want to point out is that just like Waruiji's name is an anagram to Ichiwaru, which means mean or ill-tempered or, kind of like that, you can sort of see the same basic similarities for that. So I just want to point that out real quick. Okay, so after going over explaining their whole name things before, so these are sort of like the names that I got and like what I want to present for them. And the names I want to present for Bad Peach and Bad Daisy is Ripeach and Rudaisy. Yes, Ripeach and Rudaisy. In Japanese, they would most likely be Ripīchi and Rudeijī, okay? Now, how I'm going to sort of do this is sort of say like this. So, Ripeach and Rudaisy are sort of going to be like think of them being like sort of like nicknames or more like preferred names. So, they will not be like given, like they're not going to be like their true full names, all right? So, let's look at it, let's look at Yoshi as an example, all right? So, Yoshi's name is Yoshi, okay? is Yoshi. But his full name is actually T. Yoshisaurus Munchkupis, okay? So that's Yoshi's full name. T. Yoshisaurus Munchkupis. So think of it being very similar to that. Doesn't necessarily have like that really long of a name. No, but what I'm trying to say here is that their presented names I'm giving them, or the names that they prefer, are sort of like shorter versions of their full name. So it's sort of like doing the same concept of like Wapeach and Wadaisy, where, like let's look at Warupichi necessarily. So you're literally just removing the Ru aspect of it, and you're just putting the Ru aspect of it, and you're adding the Wa to Pīchi's name, to Pīchi's name to make Wapeach, okay? So that's pretty much what it is. And I'm sort of doing the same concept, except here I'm not actually using the Wa part, I'm actually removing the Wa and keeping the second set of letters instead. And I think that would be the most interesting and more dynamic way to do it, to not only keep evidence, but also to support different style for these two characters. Alright, so that's what I sort of want to present on their names is Warupichi and Warudeiji. Now, for their full names, what I have for their names is Warupichi and Warudeiji. Now, Warudeiji, I think Warudeiji is going to be the only one I'm going to be basically keeping the same. So hers would be the only one that would stick from the original fan theory and the original concept idea that was created, okay? So Warudeiji's would necessarily stay. But for Warupichi, it would be Waripichi. So Warupichi. Or, if we're shortening it by removing the Wa, it would be Ripīchi, okay? And for Warudeiji, it would be Warudeiji. Removing the Wa and just leaving the Ru, so Rudeijī. So, basically, that would translate into Ripeach and Rudaisy, okay? So, that's what I'm going to be presenting on their names. Now, a lot of people probably be bringing it up. It's like, whoa, wait, hold on, stop. Wait, back up. Wari? Why, like, a lot of people are probably noticing, well, why did you change the U to an I? Like, what gives? What are you trying to pull? Okay, so, yeah, so a lot of people probably would notice that, and they probably would be sort of, like, asking, like, why that is. So, alright, so this sort of actually came into play when I was sort of coming up with ideas to represent Peach and Daisy on their emblems, alright? So, Bad Peach and Bad Daisy's emblems. So, that's sort of like how this came into play. And this sort of came in to when I was focusing on Daisy, alright? Now, looking at for Peach, like for Wario and Waluigi's, their emblems are pretty much just Mario and Luigi's letters flipped upside down with different colorings, okay? And, looking at Peach and Daisy, for Peach, it was kind of easier to do. Like, hers is mostly just her crown. Like, she's had other type of emblems as well, but she's more focused on, like, the crown, right? Her crown is basically what defines her. And for her, it was pretty easy. But for Daisy, the problem is that hers is basically her flower emblem, and then when you look at her emblem is pretty much the same no matter how you do it, right? It's literally the same, right? You can flip it over as much as you want. It still looks the same. I mean, sure, I can change the coloring, but it still didn't feel right if I can't not make, like, show it, like, resembles, like, a bit of a difference, or it does, like, play off differently. It just didn't feel right if I can't do something unique with it instead of just changing a background color. So that's when I had to come up with that different ideas. Like, so then I thought, well, you know what? I'll turn the first letter of their names, and to make sure I distinguish them differently, I'll flip them over. But I ran into another problem again, and again, it was with Daisy. Ugh, Nintendo, why are you trying to punish me? Okay. But yes, the problem was with Daisy again, and I'm sure a lot of people can probably figure out like what I'm trying to get over, what I'm trying to say. You flip over Peach's P, it's just gonna look like like a B, but a much bigger B. Like it's gonna look like more like a smaller B, but probably more of like a little bit bigger size. And then, but Daisy, you flip over a D, it still looks like a D. And keep in mind, I'm only talking about capitalized letters, right? I mean, heck, even Waluigi's L is a capitalized L, right? It doesn't focus on like a small L, okay? Because like, sure, you spell Waluigi's name, you don't really make the L capitalized. I mean, sure, you probably can, but usually when you're spelling out his name, the L isn't really capitalized, all right? You don't have to capitalize the L depending on like where you live or how you actually spell names in general. So, but when you're looking at like these, the emblems and like the L that's used, it's given more of a capitalized appearance. So, and truth be told, their letters should also be capitalized for Ripeach and Rudaisy as well. And that's why I ran into a bit of a problem for Daisy again, is that you flip over a D, much like how you try to flip over her flower emblem, they just basically look the same no matter what. It's, for heaven's sakes. Daisy. Why did they have to choose, why did they have to choose D for the beginning of your name, and why did they have to give you a flower? Oh! So, so I had to come up with some ideas. So I had to think of something. I had to, like, really think of something. And then it dawned on me, well, wait a minute. So I went back to their previous emblems, and I tried thinking of something I could do. Something I can do. Like, what can I do? And then it dawned on me. What if I split their emblems apart? So, like, break them in half, all right? So basically, looking at the original emblems and just basically splitting them in half. So basically, Peach's would be sort of a cracked, like a broken or split crown, and Daisy's emblem would basically be, well, technically Ripeach and Rudaisy's emblem would be sort of like a split crown and a split, like a split flower or cracked flower, however you like to say it, okay? Alright, now, you're probably wondering, okay, well, that's a very interesting concept, but how does that explain the Wari concept in Peach's name? And, I'll get to that. Okay. So, and this would actually work very well, because not only could you represent sort of like a good and bad, or yin and yang, or two of the same thing. So, that's pretty much what I like to present on that. Now, the whole Wari concept came into play for this is because when I was, after I learned, and after I came up with this idea, I decided to look up the word split in Japanese, okay? So I decided to look up the word split. And I actually came across something very interesting about the Japanese word split, or in other translations could be break, crack, divide. And if anyone is familiar with Japanese and what I'm trying to present here, they would already get what I'm trying to say. And if you actually look at these words, there's a kanji in Japanese, wari, which basically means like ratio or percentage. But another interesting thing to point out is that if you use this word as a verb, you can actually translate into split, cut, and break. And not to mention, you can also change the wari sound effect to waru as well to still keep the aspect of break, crack, and divide necessarily. So there's a Japanese word kanji. There's a kanji which in Japanese is wari, and it can also be translated into waru, which can also translate into crack, split, break. And if you look at the Japanese, the Japanese word for bad, which is warui, you put these two words together, you literally have warui, wari, waru. You see what I'm getting at? Like, literally look at these three letters. They have very similar sound effects, right? And sure, their meanings are different. Sure, they have different meanings, but their sound effects are so very similar, it's like too crazy not to see a bit of a revelation to that. So, and like what I'm sort of trying to present here is that, taking like Wari's name, not only would Waripichi would sort of be adding, combining Wario's name with Peach's name, but it would also be adding sort of like the split concept of it. It would also be adding sort of like the splitness in her name, because not only if you were to like look at her name Ripichi, or even like the English version, you're basically combining the word rip with Peach's name, Ripeach. Get it? And for Daisy, for Rudaisy, you literally would be combining the word bad, in this case rude, with Daisy's name. So Ripeach and Rudaisy. For Ripeach focusing on the rip part, and for Rudaisy focusing on the bad part. So that's for that. Now, going over necessarily, I did come up with an idea for their letters necessarily, and then as I said before, flipping over Peach's letter was pretty easy, but for Rudaisy, it didn't exactly work because her letter was still resembled a D. Now, sure, there probably wouldn't even have any like real problems with that, but it just felt like it was off. Like, it felt like it didn't fit perfectly. So I started to look at it again, and I actually came up with an idea. So instead of actually flipping their letters over like Wario and Waluigi, what if I actually reverse those? So like basically reverse them in the opposite direction. So instead of a P facing this way, the P would be facing the opposite direction. Same thing for the D, all right? Instead of a D facing this direction, the D would be focusing on the opposite direction, okay? Now, and this would actually be this could actually work, because think about it. So I decided to do some bit of digging and see if there actually is some backwards D's and P's, and there actually is. Okay, and this actually works because for Peaches and for Ripeach and Rudaisy, their names will basically begin with an R. Okay, and if you look at a lot of backwards D's and backwards P's, a lot of backwards D's and backwards P's actually have a lot of connections to the letter R. So they sort of like they were like previous incarnations of the letter R. I mean, not like literally every alphabet, but like the letter R sort of like what's the word, like evolved from them, or like sort of like you know, like came from them necessarily, not like literally came from them, but what I'm trying to state is like, you know, if you like sort of look at the sort of connections and you like sort of look like these similarities are like, okay, like how was this alphabet defined and which characters are like are best presented for the words that we have now. So that's sort of like what I'm trying to get at. Yeah. And also to mention, like, even if you look at ancient Latin, a backwards D was for an R. So yeah, I believe some of these alphabets are being presented that I looked up. There were probably a whole bunch of them, but I did come across like the Lydian alphabet. There is the Streucian alphabet. There is the Umbrian alphabet, the Oscan alphabet, and then there's also an ancient Latin alphabet. So these were some notable places where I found some backwards P's and D's, and they do seem to focus on the letter R. Now there are other letters that they're focused on as well. They're not just R, but R is probably the main one I probably noticed, and I think R would probably be the best one to stick with necessarily, because I feel like it actually works for this. And not to mention, you know, if you're looking at like if you're going to like to the Greek aspect of it, in Greek, you know, Waluigi's L is sort of like an upside down L, which in Greek is actually for the letter. It's just, well, not technically mimics the letter G, but it's but in Greek it's for the letter G, okay, which is an upside down L. But if you're looking at in Greek, the letter P is for R, and usually P and R are represented as sisters necessarily. And if you're looking at like the ancient Latin, a backwards D is for, you know, backwards D is for the letter R. But if you look at P in ancient Latin, it kind of almost resembles the I wouldn't necessarily say it's the exact same, but there are like it does kind of look very similar to where it's like, oh yeah, I can definitely see a connection there. It does kind of like, it kind of resembles a backwards version of the Greek gamma word, the Greek gamma for G. So like it resembles the Greek letter for gamma, okay? So, but more the opposite direction. It's not the same, and it's not like, it's not supposed to be the same, but like there's enough there to basically see similarity. So yeah, so that's why I want to present on their names and like their letters. So their letters will be presented as sort of a backwards D and backwards P. So instead of it being flipped, they'd be reversed. Not sort of a bad concept and idea when you think about it. It kind of works. So yeah, so like overall, like I know a lot of people like seem to think like and I apologize for that noise you're probably hearing in the background. I do apologize for that. But look, overall, like I think like an idea for like Wapeach and Wadaisy could probably work. As long as you come up with a good idea and a good concept, like and you know, like what would be the good way to distinguish them and how well they would be presented, like what would be some good ideas to represent them as characters of their own. Because like even when Mario Waluigi existed, sure, like a lot of people were like probably weren't very thrilled of them, but over time they sort of like gave a following, right? Even Waluigi has so much of a following that people were wanting him to be in Smash, but were very upset when he didn't get to be in Smash. I mean, well, technically he was in Smash, but like what I'm talking about is in terms of like full playable appearances, like a real full playable appearance, and that's what I'm basically presenting here. So yeah, so hey, if Ripeach and Rudaisy do come into play, I would have to imagine that the best way to present them is being like being love rivals for Peach and Daisy. That's really the best way I can present it, and that's, in my opinion, the best thing to do. I do apologize for any loud noise you hear in the background. I really do. So yeah, hey, that's really all I got for this video. That's all I really have to say and present. That's pretty much all I got. So hey, to go over it again, the names I got for these two characters are Ripeach and Rudaisy. Full names would be would technically be Wapeach and Wadaisy. So and the interesting thing about Wadaisy that I don't think I mentioned this before is that while her full name would be Wadaisy in English, because changing the R to L, if we're translating the Rudaisy part, we're actually removing the we're actually keeping the, alright, so basically instead of it changing to an L, like her full name would be Wadaisy, but when changing it to Rudaisy or just going with the Rudaisy aspect, we're removing the removing the wall part, and changing the L to an R instead, alright? And to be honest, I think Rudaisy actually works. I mean, think about it, like Ludeijī, Rudaisy, Ludeijī, Rudaisy, Ludeijī, Rudaisy. Look, I'm sorry, but Rudaisy sounds so much better in my opinion. So yeah, so that's what I got for their names, Waripichi and Warudeijī. So, and obviously for the shorter versions and the more preferred names that they go for is Ripeach and Rudaisy. So yeah, so that's all I got for the video. Hey, not much else to say, and I hope I presented this much better. Hey, I do want to apologize if I was sort of like hard to understand or sort of hard to explain, and like if I was just starting nonsense, and hey, you don't have to like the idea of Ripeach and Rudaisy. You don't have to like the idea of like these two characters. You don't have to like the idea of like Peach and Daisy having bad counterparts, right? You don't have to like it all, right? I just want to basically sort of speak my mind and sort of like give my general thoughts, like what like some good ideas, like how these two characters would be presented, like what could be some good ideas. Okay, that's all I'm really doing, and that's yeah. So basically, that's all I'm doing. So, hey, in the end, thank you. Hey, if you did enjoy this video and you did like what I presented, and if you did like what I talked about, please let me know by smashing that like button and leave a comment down below, alright? I want to know what your thoughts of, like, having a bad Peach and bad Daisy, alright? So, like, if they did come into existence, like, what would be your ideas of them? Like, what would you basically see out of them necessarily, alright? And if you don't like them, I would like to know what you guys have to say. Also, if you do like my content and you want to see more of what I present, and feel free to subscribe to the channel, alright? And hit the notification bells, alright? Hitting the notification bells and subscribe to the channel, and even liking that button, alright? Hitting that like button helps you out as just much as help me, all right? We're helping each other out, okay? That's how this thing works. So yeah, so that's it. There's nothing else to say. And hey, you all have a great day. Bye now.